Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? Today we are doing an episode of RE Behind the Scenes. This show you get to learn about people's projects, any real estate projects that are done, and you get to hear about what project they worked on, what their numbers are like, and the main part of the show is about what problems they encountered on those kind of projects, like how they solved them and what they learned from it if it was new. So I really love this topic because it's it's great to learn from other real estate investors. So we are having Adriana on. I'm just gonna get her in here. I can see she's on. Okay. Hey, how are you?
Hi, doing really well. How are you?
Great, good, good. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to hear about your projects. It's always, like I was saying before, it's always great to hear about other real estate investors' projects and learn from other people's, like that problems come up, and it's always great to hear how other people solve them. So I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to share. As you know, as real estate investors, we go through a lot. We don't always talk about the nitty gritty of what happens in the background, all the challenges, all the things that we face. So I appreciate you for having this platform and for us to be able to speak openly about everything that happens, good and bad.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's start with just letting the viewers know a little bit about yourself. What kind of real estate investor are you, and anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, yeah, of course. That'll be great. So I come from a construction background. My husband and I have an interior renovation business outside of Toronto for the past, over a decade now. And then we came across real estate through the construction company by working for a couple that were doing these high-end flips. And I had a light bulb moment of how do not we just do the work, but we actually get to benefit from owning the real estate and profiting on that end. So I sought out some education and learned about the Brrrr and what that was and the ability that you have to purchase a property that needs work, put the work into it in the renovations, bring the value up, and then add multiple units as well. Then refinance, rent it out, and then be able to have those funds back to repeat. So we started doing Brrrrs. We did 5 Brrrrs in the next 3.5 years after I sought out my education. And then over the past 2 years, I've started investing in apartment buildings and doing a very similar strategy. So we're doing some of our apartment buildings are Brrrr projects, just on a much larger scale. We're closing on a 50-unit Brrrr project next month.
Awesome. That sounds exciting. So which project are you going to be talking to us about? Can you tell us a little bit about what was the plans for it? What kind of deal it was?
Yeah, so I figured I'd talk about our very, I'm going to say our second Brrrr, but our very first outside of our primary, because that was, as you can imagine, the scariest of them all. It was our very first one. But also because of the magnitude of the project itself. We were already in construction, so I feel like we had a lot of comfort there, but nothing like this. So I'll tell you a little bit about the property. This property is in Hamilton, Ontario, for those of you who know that market. We purchased it back in 2018, summer 2018, with a partner actually. We purchased a single family home for $340,000. Those numbers no longer exist anywhere around here. So that goes to show you, but that was crazy. The property was really just a really one of those large brick, quite old single family homes that you would find in Hamilton, very common there, and just needed a ton of work. The owners were living there. They made it sort of into a rooming house, so we needed a lot of work. Uh, I Part of the reason why I chose this property specifically, I had zoomed into the zoning. I knew I wanted multifamily, and I knew I needed to convert it. I wanted to convert something into a duplex or something else. the zoning actually allowed for higher density. I knew I could pull off as high as many units I possibly could out of this house. So worked with the city, hired an engineer, and we worked it out that we could do a fourplex out of a single family home. It was madness. The house needed a complete overhaul. So we're talking about full guts, and then being able to find entrances and exits and layouts for 4 units out of this one single family home.
Oh wow, that's amazing to get a four units out of that. What was it? Curious, what was the square footage of that house? Do you know?
Yeah, it was really great size. It was just nearly 3,000 square feet, the home. We were able to use the attic space. So ultimately, we did 1 unit per floor. We did basement, we did main floor, second floor, another unit, and then attic. It was another unit, a studio. So it worked out, but for almost half of the time, we renovated this home for about 8 months. So that's how long it took with the process with the city and permits and all of it. But half of the time we were figuring out, hey, how do we fit the fourth unit in here? Just due to exits and entrances and being able to figure out that logistics. I wasn't willing to give up because I'm like, there's so much space. I know we can. It's just a matter of how. And I was just asking everybody that walked in the door, I'm like, come here. You're looking at this property. So I'm like, any trade that would walk in, the engineers, like we would have this conversation. Where would you fit a unit here? Where can I do a separate entrance? Like, can you show me how? Until somebody gave us an idea and it worked out perfectly. And we were able to we ended up having the basement entrance from the main floor and then down the stairs, but that worked out and we were able to do 4 units out of a single family home.
That's amazing. And that's great. Sometimes that's even just one thing that you see happen is that sometimes we can't figure it out, and just asking and just kind of telling people what your plans are helps, because everyone just sees things in different ways. And then they can give you ideas of things that you never even thought that you could do, just because, like you said, like this one's like your first one outside of your home. So, even just not the experience of like, how do you build it or put it together, make it happen? It's hard, right? Especially when it's your first. After I think a few, you start really getting super creative. I feel like the creativity really starts coming out.
Yeah, that took all that I had at the time, like, and this is how I learned heavily. I learned by talking to people, right? There's so much, to be learned from shared experience. But so we purchased it for 340. Took some time to figure out, hey, what are we doing with this property? Hired an engineer. We ended up putting it all together, applied to the city for permits. And then it took us, like I said, 8 months. We did do complete overhaul, roof, windows, basement, everything. We put about $250,000 into the property, which was a scary number at the time and not something that I had expected. That's how it all played out.
Mhm.
The property was in scary condition when we took over. So I remember on our second week of owning this property, there was an addition in the main floor and the roof just started leaking. And one of the trays sent me a video of like the water just like leaking like inside the house from the rain. And you're like, this, this is not what
You're like, oh my God, what did I buy?
what did I do? Like, I had a lot of those dreams. I have to be honest. It was madness for 8 months. Like, I just really worked very hard at putting it all together. So $250,000 in renovations. We
And those
refinanced.
8 months, that's also including the permit period too, like altogether 8 months. Because that's pretty good that you got 4 units in 8 months, plus the permits. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yes, yes. So it was we I think we refinanced. It was 9 months later that we were refinanced, and so yeah. Thank you. To me, it felt long at the time. I'm like, when is this? Like, you know how renovations are. You always like, when is it gonna end? Like, I don't understand. It was almost done last week, and it's almost done for so long.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language. It's always the same, right? It's just like, oh, we're almost done. And you're like, yes, yes. And then the same thing next week. I'm like, wasn't it almost done last week?
Exactly. That carried on for 8 months, so it felt long to me at the time. But that was exciting. And then even being able to pass through inspections, all the fireproofing of the 4 units, it was just a massive learning curve, as you can imagine, for us in every
Mhm.
aspect. But then we
Mhm.
refinanced, 9 months later, we refinanced it for $700,000. So that was
Oh,
really
wow. So you definitely
exciting.
got your money back then.
So when you see that, that's really when you like it confirms that you're like, okay, this is awesome. It's doable. It's a lot of work, but it pays off.
Mhm.
Um, so
And
that
it's
was
and I'm
interesting.
surprised actually you went big for your first one. You know, I feel like that's very brave. Although at the same time, I feel like because we understand each other, sense like our husbands do renovations, so I feel like we also take those risks a little bit more because we're like our men can take care of it.
Like,
They'll
please
figure
help.
it out.
I don't know what to do, but you do. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's like you'll figure it out. Don't worry. It's like they're for them. They're like stressing out. They're like, "What the hell are you making me do right now?" And I'm like, "You'll figure it out. Don't worry."
so yeah, listen, I tend to go big with things. I guess I move towards excitement, with things that are exciting to me. And I didn't buy the property, or when I first saw it, I didn't think fourplex. But once I realized that I couldn't get it out of my head. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
now I have to, like, I cannot leave something like this behind. I'm sure there's a way
Mhm.
to figure it out. So yeah, it was, fun times. It's lots of learning lessons there looking back. So I'm glad to share some of that as well for people listening, and to be able to learn from others. I
Mhm.
guess one of the
And what
things,
about before we get into the
yeah.
problems? What about and then so how after the refi, how was the cash flow afterwards?
Yes. So great question. And I fell in love with fourplexes. I went on to get another fourplexes after that, because I found that the fourth unit's just a really sweet spot of pure cash flow. So, if your fourth unit is $1,000 a month, that's all cash flow in your pocket. So I loved it. By the time we were done, that property was cash flowing $1,800 a month.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. So now
So
getting
there's
into the problems. So what was let's start with like what was the biggest, scariest one for you that you would say on that project?
yeah, so biggest thing was we went in with a partner in this deal, and the partnership was not what I expected that it was going to turn out. So I'm sure you've heard this before. Partnerships is really what has allowed me to scale to the level that I have, to grow my business, because it does take partnerships. And that shared experience, shared time, expertise, leverage, all of it. But it also takes learning how to partner and who to partner with, and all of that matters heavily, right? We
Mhm.
were just talking about that a few minutes ago, the JV side of things. In this case, I partnered with somebody that was inexperienced, unfortunately, in real estate. They're close family friends, but didn't know anything about real estate. So the journey was not as smooth as I wanted it to be. By the time we were done, they wanted out of the deal. They said they had no interest in being landlords. So I'm like, okay, I thought that's why we were doing this to begin with. But so I part of what I had to put my problem solving hat on was, how do I, separate this partnership in a win-win situation, which was really what I cared about. And I ended up figuring out a way to buy them out of the deal. So once we refinanced, I took my part out and I paid them out. So they
Mhm.
made a really good return on their money, over, that time period. We gave them about an 80% return on their investments, all their money back plus profits, in 9 months. So I felt really good about that. And I was able to keep the property 100% on our own, which has been very exciting as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised that because it is true. It is the journey, especially it's true. I think everyone probably. I feel like the first JV partnership is probably always like a crazy trip. And but you learn a lot, but it's also I'm surprised that in the end, especially how well it went, that they didn't think you know, like, oh my God, look at this cash flow, I got all my money back or all that stuff. I'm surprised they, you know, I mean, I feel like it's good for you because you got to keep it now, the cash flow stream for you, and you know, like all your money is taken out and everything. So it's great for you, but I'm surprised that they didn't see it in the end because it is rough during the stage. But then afterwards, when you see, like you saw it, right? You're just like, wow, we did this, we finished this. Like, look at that, all the money's out and everything.
That's right. And then this is the thing, and this is what I mean, like how do you find out how much do you align with your partner, right? Because that matters really heavily. Having these upfront conversations, and obviously, honestly, it was just like of experience. I didn't know what to talk about. It's like when you're first getting married, you're like, what do you like? I don't know, should I go to marriage counseling or something? Like, I didn't know what to ask and what to talk about. Obviously, you're excited. You're like, hey, let's just do this, make some money together, which we did, and I'm happy for that. But ultimately didn't align enough in what their goals were, what their expectations were, you know, like what the long term side of it in my mind were, you know, this all this work was so that we own this fourplex. In their minds, they had other priorities. So, and nothing, there's no right or wrong. It's just how do you align and how you have these conversations so that you know you're aligned. So now, whenever I'm have investment opportunities that I bring to investors, I put a lot of work and time and care and money and all of it into my deals. I'm always make sure I meet with my investors one-on-one and kind of get to know them, or somebody that's, you know, one of the other GP partners. I don't just send off, you know, packages or just randomly to people without getting to know them, or I would never take somebody in if I haven't gotten to know them and gotten a good alignment and feel for that reason now.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's just there's so many things that you start realizing you need to know, especially let's say in the multi-unit side where it's like you're saying, or you know, you're holding it for such a long period of time. These kind of things actually may matter, you know, like that, like, oh, I need my money back, you know, next year, you know, this is probably a 5-year project, you know, like I don't know if it'll come back that quickly. Maybe it's not a fit for you, you know.
And the funny part is, people don't always know what they want out of an investment. No, people don't always take the time to gain that kind of clarity on what they actually want. So these conversations are very helpful because I'm asking them, like, what are your goals and what are you hoping to get out of it?
Mm.
Sometimes they themselves don't know, and sometimes they will like contradict themselves in that conversation. But I help them. I try my best to help them gain some clarity of like, because if it's not a good fit, then it's better not to get into it at all. Then, you know, I prefer to do that research now ahead of time.
100%. Completely agree. Yeah, because for a lot of people get super excited, like, I want to get into this, I want to do it, whatever, whatever. And they only think in the moment. And then it's like, oh, you have kids. Like, what about university or college or whatever, you know, or sports and this and that. And they're like tapping themselves out dry. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I may need that money for, you know, a year or two from now. I'm like, then don't be giving me that money because it's like, it's not coming out for another 5 years or whatever it is.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. And anything else specifically to JV partnerships? Because I know that is, I feel like that is a topic we don't really talk about here. I haven't had like much people talk about it. And like you said, it's definitely a learning experience. And it's like, I feel like maybe everyone does like their first one wrong. Because like you said, it is like, I mean, because in marriage, I mean, do people even before they get married ask anything? Unless if you do the, you know, go and see, like, unless if you're going to church, because then they have, you know, you're supposed to before you go to church. But I feel like you don't realize you ask like after the fact, right? And you're like, oh, where are goals aligning? You're just like, okay, we're stuck together. Let's figure this out and like make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, this is so interesting. One of the things that I started implementing conversations with JVs, partners, especially if you're like managing partners together as well, right? Like I have managing partners that I own, you know, dozens of units with and that I'm doing development with. So really, you know, there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of time, there's a lot of commitment. It's all marriage in many ways. Um, and something that I started addressing very early on is what is your belief around money? Because I mean, these are, we're doing this for impact and for profit as well, and to build generational wealth for our families and to impact people around us. There's a lot of money involved. So how do you view money, and how do you handle stressful situations around money, and what would happen if something went wrong? And and having those conversations a little earlier on, and getting a feel for, hey, are you aligned in how you would handle a situation if it came up? Are you aligned with what your goal is for this project? Are you okay with not making, much for the next 10 years, but building this, massive wealth, or do you need cash like soon, and how much? And, getting down to the nitty gritty is so important. With JV partners that are coming in as money partners and as investors in our deals, they normally don't have massive involvement on the managing side of things. But then where I take the conversations with them is, what are you looking to get out of investing in real estate? Like, what's important to you here? Are you some people are like, hey, I just have, a really high paying job and I love my job. I just need to park my money in a real asset, something that's going to generate good returns for me. I don't have a lot of time, so I want somebody else to take care of it. Okay, so we can talk about that. And that's a good case scenario for a passive investor here, and what they're looking to do. And some people want only to get into Brrrs because they want to be able to like flow their money quicker. So our 15 minutes deal right now, we're looking to do a Brrr in 2 years, really double the valuation of this portfolio in 2 years' time, and be able to give quite a bit, if not all, investors' funds back in 2 years. So that's very exciting for a lot of people that are able to recycle that money, and they'll still be holding the property for another 5 and enjoying the benefits of appreciation and equity and cash flow. So some investors only want to do Brrr. Some investors don't want to mess with renovations. They find it too risky. So having that conversation and understanding what's important to them. Some really want the cash flow every month, and some don't. Some people are like, do not give me cash flow. I cannot pay any more taxes. So being able to understand what your partners are looking for and giving them a fit that's best for them is at the end of the day what makes it a win-win.
100%. Yeah, great tips. So what about any other types of problems that you encountered on your fourplex?
So contractors, uh, my husband's in construction, but we needed a whole bunch of crews in there, and there were a lot of things we were dabbling in that we hadn't done before. So we needed to bring a lot of people in. Ended up hiring the wrong electrical company for this project. That was my biggest pain in my in my behind the whole time. And I don't say this enough, but I feel like I repeat myself at the same time, because listen to your gut feeling. I tell people all the time, listen to your gut feeling. There was something about our conversations. The thing is, he was just super insistent. He kept calling and calling and calling, and then, just if you have kids, sometimes you're like, okay, like just leave me. Um, he had obviously good references, good reviews on Google. Like his quote was really great. In comparison, I had quoted with a few different guys. Neither of them came referred, so it was just from what I was seeing on reviews. Ended up hiring them and regretted deeply over time. They ended up, by the end of it all, they charged us double what they originally quoted us, which was probably the right price to begin with, but it was just a phishing scam. Like, hey, well, I'm gonna give you a small price, and then they just tackled on, fees upon fees and expenses and things, until by the time we were done, we were about double what they originally quoted. But just very, very disrespectful, like, unfortunate kind of way. So that was a massive learning. I tried to get rid of them multiple times and found out that you simply can't, because they had pull permits on this property, and ESA wouldn't allow anybody else to come in and finish the work. So this
Oh
is
wow,
how
I didn't know.
held us hostage until the end, and there was nothing we could do. We had to pay them, and we had to manage that relationship the best that we can to complete the project and to move it along. And I had a lot of negotiation learning skills to handle during that project with them.
Oh wow, yeah. I didn't know that mattered, but yeah, it's really, and I don't understand why people use those techniques of, for example, oh, it's this much, and then all of a sudden this comes up, and this comes up, and this comes up. It makes them look bad also, and I don't know why people do that. Like, I mean, yes, there's gonna be times where problems come up, and yes, the prices will go up, but yeah, I feel like it's like when you go for the cheapest, it's like they go for the cheapest, and then it's like adding up, and like you said, it comes to the same or sometimes even more expensive.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, like, yeah, so that was a massive learning. Like, I did feel that it wasn't the right, but ultimately, with everything that I was handling at the time, I just, okay, fine, like, I'll go with you. Um,
Mhm.
not doing that again. So
Yeah.
that was a learning lesson there.
And probably, right, like trying to keep the peace so that you don't piss them off to be able to actually finish the job. I feel like that's like a really, like a skill that you really learn. No, I feel like it's like, let's keep the peace, everyone, so we can just get this done instead of you abandoning me completely and just, like you said, like screwing me over even more, you know?
So this one was so hard about the whole thing. Like I technically had firing conversations twice with them, just to find out that I couldn't fire them and have to come back and like renegotiate at the table. So it was not a fun situation. Since then, we've just hired the best electricians, like in terms of those types, and we've just learned a ton how to vet, these companies properly, how to have, and then it's to me heavily goes back to obviously references. If we have other investors that have referred us, that's always super helpful. But back to conversations and that gut feeling and that alignment, that's really what goes back to can we align on a few things? And it's a little bit of a dating process by the time we have the first conversation, we have a site visit, I'm kind of getting to know them, I'm getting a feel, um, feeling some sort of, do we align? Can we have a conversation? And then in the process of getting the quote and then because I get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, so let's get into like what's the timelines, what exactly is included. I really notice how are they handling those conversations, right? Are they willing to have these conversations and explain to me what's included? Are they being transparent? So I'm really noticing a lot of that, and I've been really happy ever since. So knock on wood.
Mhm. Well, and I think to be honest, when these really crazy situations happen, it's where we actually learn the most, right? Because it's so kind of traumatizing to us. You're like, this is never happening again. And you kind of like tick off everything like, this happened, I don't like it. This happened, I don't like it. And you're like in the next person, you're like, this happened, you cannot have this. You're just like ticking it off. You better not have any of these things because it's like, it's just that traumatizing to you. You're just like, I don't want to have this kind of stress in my life. Especially with these kind of projects that there's always going to be stresses and problems in the project. And then if the people just make it worse, it's just, it's like not only you're dealing with the stresses of getting the house like to finish on time, coordinating your subs, like the normal problems, that, and then on top of them having like the people problems, the communication problems, it's just like, oh, the stress.
100% right. And that's the thing, right? This is how we learn. And this is why I don't believe in failure. Like I'm not saying that I can't fail because obviously I can and, everybody does. But it's not like I don't take it as in a bad connotation. And that's the reason, because how else do you learn? Like, you got to take, and I'm a key believer, you got to have education and then experience. So you are getting educated. I am part of a few masterminds. I take courses, I read books, I listen to podcasts, I educate, I have conversations with experienced investors, right? So I educate myself. But then I jump in and I start doing it because how else do you really get the feel for how it goes? And I knew from the beginning, I thought my whole perspective going into this one property, which honestly was our first, and it was large, and we put everything into it at the time in terms of effort and energy and all of it. I thought, you know what, if I fail miserably and everything possibly goes wrong, I'm just going to dust myself off. I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to learn my lessons. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it better. And I had that perspective in mind, and that has really helped me move along with a lot of things, because ultimately there's always a solution to a problem if you're putting that intention into it. I've never had so far. I feel really, really blessed and grateful because I haven't regretted any of the projects that I've done. I haven't regretted any of the properties I purchased, and it's rare to hear somebody say that they have.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I remember before, you know, you'd always have, or at least for me, I'm saying, the fear of failing, and for some reason thinking that like failing is the end product, and then it's like it's done and over with, like you failed kind of a thing, and going in real estate and going through them, going through, projects and going through the problems, and like you said, realizing that there's always a solution to something, and it's just like you may not like it or whatever, but there's always a solution and it will always get fixed. It was something, that same thing for me, all of a sudden kind of clicked in, and it was just there's always going to be something. And like you said, it's kind of like not really failing because you're finding a solution. You may not like that solution, don't get me wrong, you may not like it, but it's you found it, right? It's there's not as if something can never be solved. There's always a solution, and it's just being open enough to accept it and do it and be able to get it done to move on to the next level of the project or even a newer project.
That's right. I agree. I love what you said then. Like we see failure as an end, and it's not. It's just another
Mhm.
day. It's
Exactly.
another day.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you're like a kid, you don't realize like how much you fail all the time. But for some reason, as you get older, at least for me, as I get older, I started like at a certain point, I started kind of getting scared of failure. But when you start looking back, it's like, how do you improve at something if you're not failing to learn from it and figure out how to get better at it? And it's just like going back to that, yeah, this is normal. We've done it all the time. And, um, you just keep on doing it now.
That's right. I tell my kids that. My daughter is 8. She complains how hard school can be. And I tell her, listen, it's not going to get easier. It's always going to be hard because you're always learning something new. And every time you're learning something new, it feels hard at first. But look how far
Hmm.
you've come. When you were in kindergarten, you didn't know how to, like, you didn't know the alphabet. And look at you now. You're reading, you're writing, like you know. And so babies are not scared when they're learning to walk, right? Like,
Hmm.
falling over and over again. Uh, let's talk about that a little bit because, I feel like as real estate investors, we go through these people, just every human really, but like in talking real estate, especially now with the how things are shifting in the markets, house prices, interest rates, talks of recession. There's so much going on, just coming out. It's not really COVID still here, so all of it, right? Like, how does it not? Um, how do you stay mentally healthy? How do you keep yourself, moving forward and believing that, and keep doing your projects and keeping moving forward despite all of this.
Hmm. Hmm. I think, to be honest, it's like the network is like a major part of it because when you're going through downs, either you're talking to people or you're watching them for motivation. If you see them like, oh, they found a project, for example, right now, right? Oh my God, there's going to be a crash. Oh my God, the prices are at the top. You can't do anything with real estate now. And then all of a sudden you see people, they bought a house, the numbers are working for them, or especially with me, I see it, I feel like I'm able to see it a lot more just because I do private lending. So I get to see other people's projects, right? And you just like, oh, this person's able to do it. It's just like people just get really scared and think that it's like an end all type of scenario. And it's just, again, that creativity, right? And I think it's, you have to really be around the right people to help, at least for me, I feel like, especially for the motivation part, for me, I really like talking to people like you know, you just talk about like, oh, how's your project going? What is you doing? Seeing what's up and hearing the struggles, talking about the struggles, and then it kind of feels good. And or something I would say, it's like being around real estate investors, you can share the problems and things like that, where it's people outside of it don't really get the world and they're just like, oh, okay, that's nice. And you're like, yeah, you didn't get it. I'm like, I'm here struggling and you're not getting it. I need you to understand my pain.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. I agree about the community. Um,
What about for you? What do you think? I know it's like trying to read a message at the same time, right?
yeah, we've been having this discussion because obviously I have my moments of like I think we all do of just usually it has to do with me working so hard for so long that it's like start getting a bit burned out, and that's when
Yeah.
like usually energy levels are a little lower, fear comes in, scarcity comes in, like all these things. The people around you, right? If there's voices around you that are being negative or sucked into that. Um, so I've been having this discussion lately, and something that came up is really going back to the basics of self-care. I find that whenever like I'm busy, whenever like I have a project, I'm doing a large raise right now, um, self-care is one of the first things to go because there just doesn't seem to be enough time in the day for it. And I
Mhm.
mean, like, from working out to taking a walk to taking a nap to like, you
Yeah.
know,
Or what
uh,
about stress? Like I'm like that when it comes to stress. I don't know why. Like I'll have an amazing, I have like a really good routine. You know, I like get up in the morning, walk my dog. Usually after that, I'll do yoga. At night, I walk my dog and like I like that routine. And somewhere in the middle, sometimes usually at night, I'll read my book. As soon as I get into a project and it's stressing me out, it's like I don't have time to, well, walking the dog always happens, but let's say yoga, because I have to walk him, so like that's like not a non-negotiable. Like, but for some reason, like I start sacrificing, like, oh, I can't do yoga now. I can't read my books now. And it's like I for some reason get into these blockers where it's like I'm only focusing on the stress and I'm saying I don't have time for everything else. When I do, actually, I do have the time to do my yoga and to read my books or to de-stress. But it's like my mind of stress is like, no, you don't. And I was like, and all I want to do is like sleep all day because I'm so stressed. Or not
yeah.
all day, but sleep when I'm not working, you know, like I'll finish working and I'm like pass out.
So understand. And you know what it is? It's crazy. Like we get survival brain. When you get stressed like that, your brain goes into survival mode and it just zooms in. Like this is all you can see. You get tunnel vision into
Hmm.
that one thing. In this case, like usually when I'm doing a raise, like there's timelines involved, there's money, there's investors, there's people, there's all these things, and I'm like tunnel vision into like I need to get this done, I need to get this done, and then I can't, enjoy much else because that's what's on my mind. And
Yeah.
whenever
It's like
it's
all you
not,
can think of that.
yes, which is so hard when you have a family and like being present with my kids in the evenings, being able to turn that off. Such a tricky, I don't have answers, I have to be honest. I try different things. At times I'm doing better, at times I'm like super tunnel
Hmm.
vision into whatever I'm doing. But I think it's a good thing for people to think about and find ways of self-care. And also uh, um, a couple of things that I'm finding a little helpful is like I get my husband to we have a little bit of a body system where if I feel like I'm going over, I'll be like, hey, I feel like I need a day, just the two of us. Let's just go somewhere. Like, you did that too. You're like, hey, let's go on vacation. I just need it right now. Let's just take some
Yeah.
time. So being able to have that person that you can, rely on is helpful. And then going back to those, self-care, like it feels like you don't have time, but you need them more than you think. So
Yeah, and like you said, the push from someone else, 100%, you need it. Like, especially, obviously, the closest person is easiest. Because same thing, I remember there was a time where I was stressed out. I had three different projects just being a disaster on me, and I'm like, why are these happening at the same time? And but the thing is, I wasn't very busy. I actually in that week I wasn't or 2 weeks. Actually, it was like a month fiasco type of thing. But I wasn't super busy. But again, like all I wanted to do was sleep, and I felt so unproductive. And I was talking to actually my husband. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. All I want to do is sleep. I'm just so exhausted. And then I was like, I'm only really working on this one thing that's super stressful. I'm like, oh, but wait, this one too. Oh, I forgot about this one. Oh, about this one. I'm like, now I understand why the hell I'm so tired. Just even like that, the communication helped understand me because sometimes, like, it's not as if all the stresses are happening at the same time. It was within different days, but it's like they carry on to each other, right? Because it's like this one happened last week, but then right now I'm dealing with another one, but like that one's still happening. It's just like I don't have to immediate action right now. And then so I have these all compounding on me. And then like that because it happened last week, it's out of my mind. So I'm like, new problem, figure it out, right? And then like that, then working on that one again, new problem, figure it out, right? And then all of a sudden I'm wondering why I'm like breaking down. I'm like, I need to sleep. Bye, guys. It's like your mind shuts off. You're like a computer, going off. Sorry, come back in a couple hours.
100%. See, for me, I find out I normally get sick. Whenever I'm in
Mm,
this like it just happens. My body just like, I
breaks
can tell
down.
my
Yeah.
like immune system is low and I pick up something.
Hmm.
And it's just me reacting, right? And nothing, it's hard to stop me until that happens and I'm like, oh, I physically can't now anymore. And that's when you're better stop. So yeah, this is good. It's good to talk about it because we all go through it. This is the life of an entrepreneur. This is the life of a real estate investor, and
Hmm.
everything that's going on. I do want to address James' question. I don't know if he's still here, but he had asked, and I know James. So I wonder if you can answer that as well. Do you have a specific type of property or strategy you do? He says, I'm attracted to the newest shiny thing. Help.
Hmm. Oh my God, that is very normal with new investors. Yeah, let's talk about that. Tell me your opinion on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm the same. I like challenge. We put ourselves in that so that I like learning new things. So, normally I'll gravitate towards something that I find that's exciting and new. And then once I've done it once, twice, 3 times, like, okay, what's next? Or, what else is there to do,
But
right?
that's
So,
usually, I feel like that's when you're going through growths. See, for me, let me tell you mine and see, because I'm kind of seeing it in a different way. So I kind of went, when I started first getting into real estate, there's like all these different strategies, and I like wanted to do all of them. But the funny thing is, I realized from the very beginning, I knew what I wanted to do, but then I got that shiny diamond syndrome where I was like, ooh, I want to try that, I want to try that, and it was really funny because like that from the very beginning, I was like. I mean, we'll do flips and burrs because of my husband, but that's like, it's not as, I can't do that as quickly as let's say with private lending. So private, and there's more independence. Like I can work on private lending without my husband having to be involved, which I felt like I can go faster and do those kind of things quicker. So private lending was actually something very close to the beginning that I always wanted to get involved with. But then, like that, like especially when you get into the communities, you see everyone working and doing things that you get into those. So like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to get that. I want to get, every single strategy. And then it's funny because I did everything and I landed back into private lending, realizing that is what I like to do. And I'm like, why didn't I listen to myself at the beginning? But it's like, it's, I don't know if it's something that happens with new people, but I feel like it is hard to put the blinders on, and especially when you're looking at what everyone does. I don't know, is there a way to get out of it? Because I feel like I see new people doing that all the time, but I feel like what you're talking about is more like as you become experienced, because I'm the same way. As I become experienced, I want to go bigger and do bigger things because it's like I don't know. It's like that entrepreneur mentality. Like you get bored of doing the same thing and you're like, I'm bored, done it, been there, done that, next, right? You're like, I want to go bigger and you're always going bigger. But I feel like as a new real estate investor, I don't know if you had that happen, but it's, uh, like you want to try every single type of strategy out there, especially, I don't know, in the communities, in the groups, because you see everyone. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I get where the distinction is coming in, and I think it goes back to clarity, and something that I ask investors quite often. As I was saying, a lot of them don't even know what they want. So I usually ask questions like, "What do you like doing with your time? Like, where do you like spending your time?" You know, because that's a huge selling for me, right? Depending how you like spending your time, that's going to tell quite a bit what you want to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, and then when they're like, "Hey, I feel like I like rent to own. Like, I feel like I would want to do that." I'm like, um, so your first task is to go talk to somebody who does it and ask them details. What does
Mm-hmm.
it look like, a transaction? Like, what kind of conversations are they having? What kind of tasks are they involved in every day? You know, what does their day-to-day look like? And then is that attractive to you? Would you
Mm-hmm.
want to be doing the tasks and the things? And ask what the returns are. Are those returns exciting to you? Because people don't always, again, take the time to gain clarity. Hey, I'm going to go buy this building because it sounds exciting to my building. Have you looked into how much, what's the returns involved for you, for your partner? Are they even exciting to you? Because you could be getting to something for a long term that's not even, exciting as something else could be. I find that as a new investor, you just don't know either. You kind of I think there's a part of you that has to try some different things to kind of feel it out. Like I
Like the
moved to
curiosity or
Italy.
something, right? You're just like, but what if?
Yes,
But you know the
exactly.
other thing just that you mentioned, because you mentioned time. I also say time is important and money because like that, like there's quite the spectrum. Like if you have lots of money, no time, lots of money, sorry, or more, a lot of time, no money. The one thing about real estate is you do have that really nice spectrum and you really yourself decide like how much time do I want to invest into this? How much money do I want to invest into this? And that really kind of helps you really narrow down to certain strategies, right? And then like you said, and then from those strategies, then you're questioning what do I really like to do? And if I because there's certain things like some people be like, I could never do that. Like they just don't like it. You're like, take that out. If you don't like it, don't even consider it.
Yeah, 100%. I even for us, right? There's so many aspects of real estate investing, like all the things that we do. It's crazy, right? Like there's so many skill sets here involved. There's so many like different types of tasks. And I myself over the years have been learning and gaining a lot of clarity. Hey, which one of these tasks do I feel just drag my energy and I'm just getting grumpy after a while of doing this task over and over again? And which tasks do I love? And now I can double down on them, become even better at it, gain more skill sets, master it, so that I can spend more of my time there and bring a ton of value by doing those specific tasks. Um, that has gained a lot of clarity. And I also find that when you think that way, that tasks or those things that you're focusing on are normally can be translated into different things, right? Like in my case, like raising money and building relationships and networking, that's where I love to dwell and to spend most of my time. So, and that can be translated into different opportunities, really across the board. But it's just what is, what are you passionate about that you can add a ton of value to others and enjoy your time, but make money and make it a win-win for people around you.
100%, completely agree. So we're getting close to the end. I'm curious, any last another problem that you wanted to talk about?
I'm sure there's tons. I can't think of any one specific.
No, yeah. But I think we spoke about some really good ones because spoke about mental health because it is true. You go through it, and like you said, right? Like I'm on vacation now because I was like, my husband, he got some time off, and I'm like, we need to leave because I'm going crazy right now. And so, like, that's a great topic because actually, I haven't really talked too much about that one. So that was great that you spoke about that. And like JV part, oh, capital, raising capital. Can we talk a little bit about how it is for you? Because I know you do it a lot, and I'd love to hear like this, just like what you go through when it comes to raising capital.
Yeah, so it's really building relationships. That's how I see it, right? As I mentioned, one of my really core principles is I want to have long-term investors. I want to have investors that will join us and will reinvest with us. And we do have quite a few investors that will reinvest in our future deals. We give them priority as well because I really want to build long-term relationships. I also have a second, I don't advertise that, but like in my mind, a second sort of a principle that I use, which is like I love to be able to, if you're investing with me, I love to be able to go to dinner with you and have a great time. Like I need like that kind of alignment where, I want us to also be able to go out to dinner and, and hang out or whatever and have that possibility is another thing that I look for. But it's so at the end of the day, it's just building relationships. Now that takes you getting in front of people. So I do a lot of networking. I mean, I go to a lot of events. I join. I'm part of a few masterminds. I go to different places, but I love it because I love meeting new people. I love I get extremely excited about the opportunities we have available, and just people like yourself. Like, hey, I have funds that I need to place somewhere, and to me, it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to offer opportunities like that to investors because that's how I got started in building what I'm building right now in the apartment building space because of my sister who was, she's just like, I have money. I just like, where do you put it? Like, what do you do? Right? Like it's on mutual
Mm-hmm.
funds, nothing. And I thought, and she's like, can you help me with that? I'm like, awesome. Not do I only get to do what I love and what I've learned to do and have changed my life, but I also get to now offer that
Share
opportunity
that.
like her, right? And the impact overflows into my family, my community, and then beyond. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I love about capital raising, is just building those relationships. And then being able to offer opportunities like this to investors to which is very exciting.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a lot of fun, especially when you can see how you're helping them. You see like look at what you're getting out of this and it's like you don't even have to do anything because I'm all doing all the work for you. Even more, it's even more nice to see that. Because it's so funny that you said your sister. It's the same thing with my sister. When she saw what's going on, she's like, you need to take my money. Like, please just make me money. And I'm like, gladly, let's do this.
Exactly, because then it's a win, right? And that's what's exciting now. Like I take it very seriously, and I'm like, put so much intention and effort behind it, which I make sure to go above and beyond. Um, but
Hmm.
that's to me, that's what really capital raising is at its core. It's just building relationships and getting to know people and aligning the right opportunity. With the right person.
100%. Completely agree. Uh, so do you have one or two tips for the viewers that you'd like to give them?
Yeah, tips. I think the biggest one is take some time to gain clarity. I love the word clarity. I know I used it multiple times during this call here because success is so unique. There is no one thing that's success. There isn't one equation. It's so unique. To me, if my kids are not thriving, then I'm not successful just because that doesn't, to me, that's important. So if in my life of success, if I only focus on making money and ignore my kids to the point that they're not thriving, to me, that's not success. So what is success to you? It's so unique, right? Is it time with your family? Is it time with your spouse? Is it, or is it the thrill of working? You just love the challenges. So it's just so unique. So gain clarity on what is important to you. What is your end goal in mind and implement that. Don't compare yourself to others because it's just everybody's so different and it's not about that at all. Um,
And like because of that, right? Because you do start comparing, but it's funny because as that happens, you start realizing, for example, like, oh, that's not for me anyways. Even like 'cause sometimes, especially I feel like the newer people, right, you kind of start going like, oh, they're doing that, I need to do that, and they kind of start flowing in that, and then afterwards with experience you're just like, you really start getting to know yourself and realizing this is actually what I like to do. Because it's like you said, right, like you want to also enjoy what you do and be happy with it, because I mean, who wants to be successful and or I mean, I don't even think these make sense, but you know, like whatever you think is success, because usually this kind of contradiction happens. Like if you're successful but not happy, it's like the contradiction happens because you thought success was this and you're still not happy, and then you're just having to reanalyze and be like, why, you know, I achieved my goal, what's happening, you know, why am I not happy? And then really you start learning a lot more about yourself too. I feel like that's like when you gain freedoms, I feel like that's where you really start learning yourself, like, which is something I feel like we all, or at least I feel like we want to share that knowledge with everyone. No, it's like once you're not having to, when you have the freedom to, let's say, decide to work or do what you want to do, like doing what you really love to do, be it real estate or something else, is where you really start getting to know yourself a lot more. Because when you're like, especially people who are like really just making ends meet, like you're just working to pay the bills, and you don't have the time to actually know yourself, right? And know who it is that, like, what you like, what are your hobbies, you know, do you actually like doing the job, or is just you're doing it because you're stuck in it just because you have to pay the bills, you know? Whereas like once you start gaining those freedoms, like you get a little rental property and it's making you cash flow, it kind of starts slowly relieving stresses of you. And then you're like, oh, I have this money, you know, maybe I can spend a little on dinner or something.
So that's so true. And I think it's a little bit about a chicken and an egg situation there. Because if you never stop to question, to gain clarity, to ask yourself, you may never get out of that, rat race ultimately, or that place you're in. Because that's what it took for me. Like there's always a why. There was an event in my life that happened. My mom went through a serious mental health crisis and moved in with us. This is back when I first sought out real estate education. And I felt this responsibility on my shoulders of like, holy, I have two tiny little kids at home, but I also have a mom that just moved in. And we're living paycheck to paycheck right now. Like, how are we, we can't, like, I can't. It's just, it goes so much beyond me. So there's always a why, and there's that event. So it took me to be like, I don't know what's going on right now, but something has got to change, and to be able to start seeking it and intentionally something else. And listen, if I can do it, if we can do it, like anybody really can. And it's just a matter of stopping and being intentional about, hey, where do I want to get to, and then taking those steps to get there.
100%. Yeah. Thank you so much. And like the viewers said, great advice. Thank you so much. It was awesome to have you on and to hear your perspectives, hear about your project. And yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so fun. Well, I'm sure we'll see each other soon.
100%. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.